In this episode, we update and break down the round 2 series of the Boston Bruins and New York Islanders, as well talk about the Montreal Canadiens sweep against the Winnipeg Jets. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Bergeron, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, go to jablamsports.com, see all our podcasts, and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on this show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts, and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. The first series we're talking about on today's podcast is the New York Islanders versus the Boston Bruins. Joining me to discuss the matchup are Lauren Campbell. She writes for NESN, and you can hear her on Snipe and Sully podcast for FTF Media. You can find her on Twitter at Lauren or LaFontaine. Lauren, did you get that from Rick Jenneret or no?
I did not. This has been my thing for probably close to 20 years now. So
all right. I was a big fan of Rick growing up, and I love listening love listening to him call LaFontaine and many other Sabres. Also on the show, old pal Christian Arnold. He's editor-in-chief at New York Islanders Hockey Now and co-host of Hockey Night New York. You can find him on Twitter at C_Arnold01. Christian, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
All right. So we just got finished watching, for me, an exciting Game 5 for Christian. A fabulous Game 5. And for Lauren, maybe not so fabulous Game 5. As the Islanders pull it out in the end. 5-4 win in the Garden. So that's one thing I want to talk about is it's been a pretty big impact, especially in this second round, with having, especially with the Garden, full capacity of fans. Even in Long Island, it's rocking over there. We saw that last game. That was insane. Game 6 could be, it's possible, the last game of the series, but also could be the last game at the Coliseum with the new USB arena coming in the fall. Christian, how have you enjoyed the rocking arena in the Coliseum?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a real return to normalcy, so to speak, around here. I mean, there's nothing really as quintessential Long Island as, a bunch of Long Islanders drinking from noon till about 7 o'clock before an Islander game in the parking lot of the Nassau Coliseum, and then the atmosphere inside the building. It's been phenomenal, and I was up in Boston for Game 1 as well. The atmosphere for them has been phenomenal as well. I think really it's on a bigger scale, on a bigger picture. I think it's kind of that refreshing, kind of nice change of pace after the year and a half that I think everyone has had. I know Game 1 was the first day that Boston reopened as a city. The bars were packed there when I got out of the Uber and walked into the arena. People were lined up outside. The building was loud. And the same thing with the Nassau Coliseum. This series is the first time you almost had just about a full building on Long Island, a full building in a long time. And it was loud with 9,000 fans for the Pittsburgh series. It was deafening with 12,000 fans for the Boston series so far. It really is just an incredible thing. On a bigger scale, it's just an incredible thing to see things getting back to normal around here. And I think what's kind of been the fascinating thing about all of this too is almost the insertion of the two NFL teams that in New York and Boston, with the Patriots kind of jumping on the Bruins bandwagon and the Jets becoming such a big part of the Islanders Nassau Coliseum atmosphere. You have Dan Feeney smashing beer cans on the top of his head, and you have Clark Gillies smashing beer cans on the top of his head, inspired by Dan Feeney. So it's just been a really great series from that regard, aside from the fact that these games have just been phenomenal to watch, night in and night out.
How old is Gillies?
He's 68 now.
Oh, all right.
So I mean, the guy can still throw him back. There's no doubt about it. And let me tell you, he lives on Long Island and still, and I know the area he's from. Those, the North Shore Long Islanders, they know how to throw beers back. So he's no rookie when it comes to that.
Oh my goodness. And Lauren, what kind of impact has the fans had on this series?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Christian nailed it. Just to have the normalcy there, it's huge for the players, for the fans in general. Just be able to walk into a near packed stadium, watch your hockey team, especially in the playoffs. There's nothing like playoff hockey. The atmosphere is just absolutely insane. And, obviously the players love it. They were a lot of players, not just the Bruins and the Islanders, but other teams in the playoffs have been talking about how it was really lonely last year without fans, and that it was really tough without the fans because, there was a lot going on in the last year, of course, and to have the fans back in somewhat of a normal season. I know it was condensed. I know there were still a ton of restrictions for the teams, and a lot of the players were still away from their families. So to be able to feed off the energy from the fans, I think is certainly going to be beneficial. I really wish the Canadian teams would do the same, but after the next round, we probably won't have to worry about that. And I don't know what the fan situation will be up north if it gets that far. I know there was some things approved today for a travel exemption over the border, but there is nothing like a sold out or close to sold out arena in front of your hometown crowd.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that later in this episode, the Winnipeg versus Montreal series, and we'll be discussing that and the fans coming into the arena and possible. Looks like could be Montreal, but it's last time I checked, it was 2-2 in that series. 2-2 in the game of Game 4. So Montreal could sweep them. It's very possible by the end of recording tonight. But I did want to counter because, Lauren, you mentioned how different it is from being in the bubble last year and then this year. Have the fans been nicer to Tuukka with everything that happened last year in the bubble?
No, absolutely not. It's so frustrating because you see the stats, you see the numbers, you see the records he holds, you see the records he's broken. You've seen that the time and time again he's bailed out his team. But it's constant from the people who just will never see past that. It's always going to be he can't win big games. He chokes when the Bruins need him the most. He gives up on his team. It's so frustrating. But, I think that at the end of the day, he's going to go down as one of the best Bruins goalies in team history. He already is leaving his mark here. It's just going to be that big red flag if he doesn't get to win a cup in his career with the Bruins. It's just people will never let it go if he does not complete that one final thing. And it's huge. I mean, you have goalies out there that Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, people love him, and it's so frustrating because he obviously deserves a cup. He was so loyal to the Rangers, and Tuukka's been loyal to the Bruins, and he can't help when he gets injured. He can't help if he gets a migraine. He can't help if his newborn daughter is sick when he's in a bubble and cannot be near his family and his family cannot be with him. I don't think any parent, I'm not a parent, but I don't think any parent would wake up and be like, okay, all right, I'm just going to stay here, bye, and just hang up the phone and go about their job. Like, this is their job. And I think people forget that. But enough of that rant. It's, no, people are not kinder to Tuukka. I think if anything, they are much meaner.
There are so many other organizations, hello Philly, who would kill to have a goalie like Tuukka Rask. Oh my goodness. Man, there was so much other little stories going on, and I love the whole thing between Patrice Bergeron and Coach Barry Trotz and the whole calling him out for cheating with the face-off drop. Everybody kind of does it. If you can get away with it, why not? But then for him actually getting kicked out at the beginning of the game, Lauren, what did you see in that whole face-off scenario and everything between him and the coach, and then finally getting kicked out on the draws.
Well, I think that we knew we were going to see that. I think what Trotz said isn't untrue. I just think how he said it, and it pissed off Bruins fans, rightfully so. That's Patrice Bergeron. That's the captain of their team. It's a long time player. He's been with this organization. It feels like forever. And to hear that about a player who doesn't have, any sort of dirty history, it just strikes a nerve with Bruins fans. But to see it, of course, I was like, there it is. I knew that was going to happen. But, Bergeron has gotten kicked out in games before. David Krejci gets kicked out. I feel like everybody gets kicked out in the face-off, whether justified or not. But it certainly didn't help that it was right away. I'm sure that it lit a fire a little bit under Bergeron and kind of maybe got Barry Trotz smiling a little bit more. But it just kind of adds to the quote unquote rivalry that these two teams are building, and it makes it a little more fun and a little more competitive, and even more fun on Twitter to have the fans kind of go at each other for that.
It's interesting because Bergeron hasn't been very good in this series in the face-off dot. Jean-Gabriel Pageau has been maybe owning him. Christian, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw that, especially in the games on Long Island where Barry Trotz could really get those matchups that he wanted, where that that Pageau line with Zajac and Kyle Palmieri out there, they really kind of had the perfection lines number, especially in the face-off draw. And I think it is kind of funny that, of course, the first draw, he goes out there, he gets kicked out, and you really can't make that up. It's gamesmanship that I think us in the media talk about, but I don't necessarily know if it really filters down to the officials, especially with everything else that they have going on. There's a very famous story up here. It's a little ways back, but when Mike Milbury was running the Islanders in that playoff series against Toronto, where he very famously brought in the beat writers, the local beat writers, to basically take them through a video screening of all the penalties that weren't being called and end up in all the New York papers. And it was a big topic, but it's not as though the refs who are flying in from Toronto or wherever to do the game are seeing this, by the time they get into the hotels and they get set for the game and everything. So, is it gamesmanship? Is it entertaining? It definitely adds another element to it. Certainly Bruce Cassidy hasn't been shy of doing that himself, especially tonight after the game, kind of calling out the Islanders, calling them, saying that the organization is has kind of created this persona that they're, calling them the New York Saints, which is also a very funny thing here, where we used to have a Long Island lacrosse team named the New York Saints that played at the Nassau Coliseum for a very long time. So there's gamesmanships on both sides, and certainly, it adds an element of fun and an entertainment factor. And I think both of these guys kind of understand that, and they're trying to play the game. And hey, look, if your team's down 3-2 going back to the opposing team's arena, why not try and put that in their mind? Why not try and put that out there and make that a part of the narrative going back out there? Why not try and take some of the pressure off of your guys going back into a crucial game in enemy territory?
Mm-hmm. And of course, we saw some power plays. Isles have been better as of late on the power play. We saw more of it in Game 5. And it looked like maybe a bit of a makeup call, right? They looked like they missed the elbow on Scott Mayfield by Nick Ritchie. I think a lot of people on social media and some fans in the arena thought very differently of it. Some of them thinking Mayfield was crying or flopping, while, of course, myself and some others thought it was very different. Of course, then the refs make up the call. Maybe a light / Kiraly power play leads to a big goal. You could see Coach Cassidy was really pissed off with the call, but I didn't see him thanking the refs for not calling the elbow. Maybe I missed that one. Lauren, what do you think?
Yeah, well, there has been missed calls on both sides throughout this series. I think there's been a lot of egregious calls. I think tonight really highlighted the most egregious on both sides. We saw high sticks, we saw elbows, we saw everything not get called. And it's incredibly frustrating on both ends for fans, for media, because, these are things we watch for all year. We watch it all year. We watch these trips get called. We watch high sticks hardly ever get missed, it feels like. And in the biggest stage, they're calling a quote unquote slash when you should have called the elbow or you should have called the high stick to Craig Smith. And, I think that Cassidy's comments tonight, it was just frustration boiling over. Just he's so frustrated that he's not getting the calls when the Islanders have gotten some of those calls. And I don't think what Trotz and Cassidy said, I don't think what either of them said was wrong. I think they're two of the greatest coaches in this game. I think that they have tremendous respect for each other, and how they go about their comments toward the other team, I feel, is pretty respectful, given that, in 2019 we had Craig Berube, just crying about being the least penalized team and everything like that. So, we have seen coaches whine and cry about this, but I do feel like these two coaches in particular are very respectful toward it. And even when Cassidy was sounding off, he was still very respectful about the missed calls. The New York Saints thing, it made me chuckle just because I went and looked up New York Saints and it was a lacrosse team. And, just small things like that where I'm like, they probably both are angry and frustrated, but they're, at the end of the day, the Islanders now have to focus on closing the series out at home, while the Bruins have to go into enemy territory to try and extend the series and bring it back to Boston. So, I think that there's going to be missed calls for the next game or two if it goes that far. I don't know if they'll be as egregious. It worries me that there will be, just because there's always that kind of series-altering missed call, whether it favors the Bruins or the Islanders. There's always a call like that. And maybe we saw it tonight. I don't know. We won't find that out until Wednesday night. But, it's the officiating overall needs to be better. And it needs to be better on both sides because, like I said, there's way too many egregious missed calls tonight.
We've seen this on and off throughout the playoffs. It's harder, too, with the players being that much more talented and that much more fast, that it's sometimes you miss a call. And I find it a little funny that the league hasn't really fined any of the coaches so far. We saw Brindamore really go nuts about all the stuff that he's had to deal with, especially even in the first round. But then the following game, he took it back and said nice things about the refs. So I'm like, is the league like calling on them and saying, we're not going to fine you, but you better compliment us or tone it down? So that's kind of what it seems like. The Islanders getting the power play on a roll. Matt Barzal playing like Matt can, scoring a big power play goal there. What has turned it around, Christian, on the power play and for Barzal? Are they just tied together maybe?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because even if you go back to April during the regular season, at one point the Islanders power play was really, really struggling. And Barry Trotz was asked about it, and kind of to the surprise of everyone that was on the Zoom call, he kind of said that the power play was what it was basically, and that its job is to go out there and not lose them games, and if it helps them win a game, that's great. And it kind of took everyone back because it was kind of an admission of, well, we know the power play stinks, and it's kind of just what it is. Now you've kind of seen this transformation in the postseason where you have guys playing a little bit more confidently on the power play. The biggest thing that the Islanders do when they're successful on the power play is they're putting pucks on net. You'll see them, instead of passing the puck 30 different times, instead of shooting, when they're not successful on the power play, they're trying to make the perfect play. They're trying to be too cute with the puck. They're trying to just do too much. And then you're seeing, when they're successful, you're seeing them just put the puck on the net. You're seeing them fire the puck from the outside and get shots through. And they're creating kind of that chaos in front of the net. So I think that's kind of the difference. And whether that's kind of a change in personnel, or whether that's just certain guys getting going, it's kind of an all-encompassing thing, because for a while it was everybody, whether it was Barzal in that first unit out there or the second unit out there, and they were all kind of plagued by the same thing, and you kind of saw them get away from that a bit more during the series, and even later in the season when you had Oliver Wahlstrom out there, when he was healthy, he was out there in the power play a little bit and getting some opportunities, and he was a guy that was just going out there and ripping shots on net, and he really didn't care where he was positioned, but he was just going out in there and shooting. And I think that's been the biggest change for the Islanders, because they are a team that, for whatever reason, Matt Barzal in particular, up until more recently, who's been a little bit more gun shy. I'm sure you guys, if you saw the first round or even the first couple games of this round against between the Islanders and Bruins, that Barzal would have a pretty clear look, and he'd go instead try and make the perfect pass over to Eberle or Komarov if he's out there with him. So there was always that hesitation. It seems he's gotten away from that. And it seems as a unit, they've gotten away from that, which has been a lot more successful. And then obviously the confidence level is there a lot more than it had been recently. And Barzal's obviously being the recipient of a lot of success now in the last couple games.
We had a great finish to that game. Isles with the big lead, 5-2 in the third, and I even told my dad, don't ever count the Bruins out. And my dad has, in our fantasy pool, a lot of people, he has Bruins. And I'm like, don't. He's like, no, I don't know, it's over. I'm like, no, it's the Bruins. Watch out. They almost came back, and boy, oh boy, I was a big fan of that Marchand goal. That was a beauty. Picked up the bubbling puck. He went right around Ryan Pulock. He went left around Semyon Varlamov and scored a beauty, and that kind of turned it around. Pastrnak on the power play, and almost with pulling Swayman out because they took Tuukka out with the 5-2 lead. Took him out, and they couldn't muster much at the end there. Some good defense by the Islanders to seal the deal. So, next game, Game 6, Long Island in the Coliseum. Christian, do the Islanders seal the deal at home?
I hate these questions because it's such a tough thing. Because it's the Boston Bruins. You can't count them out, as you saw tonight. And it's every sports writer's worst nightmare when you have about 400 words done of a story, and then all of a sudden you're seeing goals found in the back of the net. And with being the Bruins, you almost feel like you might as well just delete everything and restart over because it's coming. I want to say this series is kind of fit the narrative that the last series against Pittsburgh played out. You saw them split the first two games on the road. You saw them split the first two games at Nassau Coliseum with a stronger effort that second game, much more dominant effort that second game than the first game, which was a little more close. So I think the momentum that they have going, I think the kind of attitude that the Islanders have had this entire series and this entire playoff run, and really for the last couple of years under Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello, I can see them closing out on home ice because they already have turned the page, basically. And that's the mentality that's really made them successful the last couple of years, is that ability to just, at the snap of a finger, they've moved on. They know that the task at hand is they enjoyed the win. They got a big win in Boston. Now the task at hand is to go back to the Coliseum and win it. And I think, too, there is something to be said for this really, 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 really being the final, run at the Nassau Coliseum. Because this building has meant so much to not just the fan base and the people that have had so many firsts in that building, but also the players on that team. If you look at the Islanders roster, a lot of those guys have been lifelong Islanders, and a lot of those guys have grown up in a lot of different ways at the Nassau Coliseum. You look at Josh Bailey, who basically came into the NHL when he was 18. His entire career has been played at the Nassau Coliseum. That's been his home his entire NHL career. And there's a lot of the same for a lot of those guys on the roster. So there is some specialness and some extra motivation from that as well.
Oh, I'm on the fence. I'm 50-50. I did say before the series even started, I said Bruins in 7. Lauren, how are Bruins fans feeling going into Game 6, and what do you think they feel? Could they take it to 7?
So I originally said before the series started that this would go in the Bruins' favor in 7 games. So I'm going to stick with that. I think that these are two very, very strong teams. And as for fans feeling around how they feel in Boston, the Bruins have been in this situation so many times. They were down 2-0 in 2011 to Vancouver. They go down 2-0, like 3-0 all the time. Not 3-0, but, and they always make these late period comebacks, just like Christian was saying. I felt it was almost tonight. I had most of my game wrap written, and then it was 5-4, and I was like, oh no, like it's I don't want to delete all this, but I obviously want the comeback. But I think Game 6 is going to be really, really chippy. I think it's going to be really intense, fast paced, like we saw tonight. The two teams are keeping up with each other, and it was just the Bruins completely outshooting the Islanders, but they were just keeping pace with one another, which is incredibly important throughout these playoffs. But I think that the Bruins do take it back home, and I do think they take the series ultimately, but it's not going to be easy by any means. I mean, we knew this going into the series that this wasn't going to be easy. The Islanders and Barry Trotz have the Bruins number for whatever reason. The first 5 games, the Islanders just made them look silly. And now the Bruins are a different team, and they match very well with the Islanders. So it's going to certainly be really tough, but I do think the Bruins bang it out in 7.
You can find them on Twitter at Lauren for Lauren and at C_Arnold01 for Christian. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
And in the North Finals, the Montreal Canadiens sweep the Winnipeg Jets. Joining to discuss are Michael Remis. He's one half of the Sports Talk Winnipeg. You can go to winnipegsportstalk.com. You can get all the links of all the guests that we talk about in this episode on the website, jablamsports.com. This episode specifically is Season 6, Episode 26. You can find Michael on Twitter at mremis, Remis. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I know it's late for you, so thank you for staying up here till the end of the game.
Yes, quick overtime though, but it was a little bit late for us on the East. And of course, back on the show is my pal Ian Boisvert. He's the managing editor at Rabid Habs, and you can hear him on the Nosebleedscast talking all things Habs. You can find him on Twitter at @maybeit'sIan. So, Ian, thank you for coming back.
Peter, thank you for having me, as always.
And we just witnessed a series sweep in Montreal. Tyler Harrow Toffoli, that's what I'm calling him now. Sorry, I'm not a huge NBA fan, but I do love Jack Harlow. And he uses him in that track, of course. And he scores the big overtime winner, Toffoli. Series winner. What a nifty move, taking the puck off the boards and passing it over by the young Cole Caulfield. To start the playoffs, Dominic Ducharme sat some of those young guys, like Goal Caulfield. I think some of them are calling him Goal Caulfield. Are they, Ian? Even though he hasn't scored yet.
Yeah, Goal Caulfield's one. Another one is the small goals boy. We've thrown that name around. I think Tyler Toffoli said he was looking for him on the ice after the goal to celebrate with him. He said he had a hard time finding him because he's just a little guy. So yeah, there's lots of nicknames for the young guy.
Mm-hmm. But again, so he sat some of the young guys, but they've had a huge impact. Nick Suzuki, of course, Jesper Kotkaniemi didn't play, Cole Caulfield. So people questioned him then, and they look like great moves now. Are they questioning him at all now?
It's kind of tough too, and I wasn't a huge fan of those moves, especially because in that series against the Leafs. Sheldon Keefe had said, the series kind of shifted when Caulfield and Kotkaniemi entered the lineup. Mm-hmm. I think, Caulfield is the kind of guy that the Canadiens don't have a lot of, and they haven't had a lot of in their recent history. He's not quite a volume shooter, but he is a deadly shooter. He's going to put the puck past the goalie. I know he hasn't done it yet, but he's taken a lot of good looks at a really, really sharp goalie in Connor Hellebuck. But, and then you take a look at Alexander Romanov, who finally got into the playoffs. It was his first ever playoff game. And the only reason he got in was because Jeff Petrie couldn't go with an injury to his right hand. So, it's tough to criticize him. I want to, because I want to see these guys more. But, they'd played 11 games in the last 19 days. No one on the team played less than like 10 minutes and change. No one played more than like 19 minutes. Everything's really well-rounded for this team right now. They're kind of rolling all 4 lines. The defense, they're not really rolling as much. They don't really use that bottom pairing as much, but Kulak and Gustafsson stepped up today to help them finish off the series.
Unlike the track from Jack Harlow, your homeboy, Tyler, he's not going to play in South Beach, but he is possibly going to be playing Mile High or in the desert, and he will be playing into the summer. Would the Canadiens rather face the Avalanche or the Golden Knights? They seem like they match up better against a more highly offensive team than a team that's a little bit more shut down or more well-rounded like the Knights.
I don't know if there's a good answer to that question. I don't think no one's going to pick the Canadiens to win their next series. No one picked them to win this one. No one picked them to win the first one. And to be honest, I think that suits this team just fine. I think they like playing that underdog role. They like being that team that no one really is believing in. I'll be honest, I didn't believe in them a whole bunch this year. It was kind of tough to. They went over a calendar month without stringing together consecutive wins, and now we're looking at them winning 7 in a row when it matters the most. My gut tells me I think they match up better against Vegas. But I mean, if Vegas knocks off Colorado, well, you're talking about beating a team that just beat who everyone thought was the best team in the league in Colorado. It's not really. I don't think there's a way you look at the series and say the Canadiens look better against one team than another. But again, I think that suits them just fine. I think they're going to go in. They like getting those first 2 games on the road. They've won out of the 4, games 1 and 2 that they've played so far this season. They've won 3 of them. So I think they still feel confident about themselves, even knowing that the team that they're about to face is one of the best teams in the league, no matter who comes out of that series.
The Jets swept Connor McDavid and his Oilers. Then they got swept right back by the Habs. How could they go from being able to win so many games and then lose right back in this round? Michael?
Yeah, that's a question we're all trying to figure out over here. I mean, you look at the way the Jets ended the season, and it wasn't great. I think they went on a 7-game losing streak. They had a couple wins there at the end, but they really finished the season horribly after starting off pretty good. I think, throughout the season, they relied quite a bit on Connor Hellebuyck, and, more often than not, they'd be on the wrong side of the shot differentials. Against Edmonton, they were able to find a way to pick their game up a bit. Connor Hellebuyck, I think he's the best. He's top 3 goalie in the league. I know he wasn't nominated for the Vezina, but he was last year's Vezina winner. And they did win 3 of the games in overtime. And the game 1 was decided with a goal at the final minutes of the third period. I think last 10 minutes. So you look at those 3 wins, I think they were definitely coin flip games. They got a bit lucky, but I don't think that would explain anyone what we saw the last 2 nights where they got absolutely dominated by Montreal and didn't even look like the same team. But I think that's kind of how the Jets have been this whole season. I mean, sometimes they look great and you think, yeah, these guys are pretty good. And then other times, like tonight, I mean, they don't even look like they belong in the same arena. I know they were missing Mark Scheifele. They were missing Paul Stastny for the first 2 games. I think the Dylan DeMello injury hurts them more than those just because they don't have the depth at defense to handle that. They're playing Jordy Ben. Tucker Pullman's playing top minutes. It just doesn't work with the defense, personnel that they have. So it's definitely tough. They should have been better than they showed tonight, but you look at the elimination game they played against St. Louis in 2019, where they completely no-showed in Game 6 in St. Louis. The last 2 games were very reminiscent of that, and they got they couldn't get a lead the whole series, which is unbelievable to think. They couldn't even get the first goal, and I felt like the last 2 nights when they didn't score first, they were just demoralizing. They battled back to tie. I mean, 2 goals from Logan Stanley, but you look at tonight, I mean, they're outshot severely, outchanced, out time on attack. All the advanced stat metrics not in the Jets' favor. I think part of it is the DeMello injury and the Scheifele suspension, but that doesn't explain, some of the stuff that we had to sit through as, anyone who watches the Jets all year over the last tonight and last night as well.
If you put a number in terms of percentages with the DeMello injury and, of course, the Mark Scheifele hit and suspension, hit them like a brick wall other than the wall on the other side of the ice. How much in terms of percentages was that, and then the other in terms of the series sweep loss?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think both of those together, I don't think it was great. I mean, the first game, they were definitely in it until the end. It was a 1-goal game, aside from the empty netter. They were able to put a couple pass carry Price. They were able to get shots on goal, which they really couldn't get. I think DeMello was hurt right away in game 1. They seemed to couldn't figure it out. I think the Mark Scheifele injury, they had so much continuity all year, and it kind of ruined. It definitely wrecked their first power play. They weren't really sure who should be on the first power play, who should be on the second. They tried mixing and matching, and it didn't work. And they were trying to find, they do this Scheifele Connor Wheeler line that has been playing together for so many years, and they just couldn't figure it out. And the Stastny injury too, they didn't have him. Dubois, and we're waiting. Everyone here is wondering if he was hurt, because he did not look like the player that we saw last year in the playoffs, and the player that you would trade a guy like Patrick Laine for. So maybe that'll come out, when they clean out their lockers. I'm assuming it's going to be, today's Monday, probably Wednesday. I think there was a lot of factors, but I think even still, it doesn't explain just getting absolutely dominated by Montreal. That's a team that's on a roll. But going to the series, we had talked so much, hey, you know what? The Jets are going to have this long break. They're going to be rested. It's been a compact season. Montreal just went 7 against Toronto, and now they're playing 4 games in 6 days here against the Jets. There's no reason for the Jets to get absolutely dominated here by this Montreal team that should have been tired, but they clearly had a lot of energy. While they don't have any superstars, they have a lot of solid players, and they got the young guys like Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki stepping up and making plays. So, hats off to Montreal. They played awesome. I think it has to be disappointing. If the Jets lost, fine, but this is a pretty demoralizing way to have your season end.
Yep. 7 straight wins for Montreal. 3 there in Toronto. Just 12 days ago, they were on the verge of getting bounced down 3-1 against the Leafs. 3 wins straight there, 4 wins straight here, and then Carey Price pretty much right then when they were down 3-1 said, "Jump on my back, boys. I'm taking you as far as I went in 2014, and that's what he did. He's in the zone right now. What could throw him off, Ian? Are teams like the Jets and the Leafs not causing havoc around his crease enough where, say, a Western team might?
Yeah, it was definitely surprising in this series to see that, it's not to say it's the book on Carey Price. It's the book on every good goaltender. You put bodies in front of him. You make sure he can't see the puck. He's not going to have an easy time stopping it. I don't know if the Jets did a lot of that. And, maybe that's, there's 2 ways of looking at that. It's either the Jets didn't do it or the Canadiens did a good job clearing the front of the net for Carey Price. I tend not to buy the second part of that, just because they didn't do it all year. They did a pretty poor job of clearing the front of the net. But then again, this Canadiens team is doing a lot of stuff really well now that they struggled with earlier on in the season. Their penalty kill was bad. And now their penalty kill is a plus in these playoffs. They've only given up 3 goals and they've scored 4 goals when they're shorthanded. Mm-hmm. The power play seems to have figured itself out. I don't know what Eric Gustafson's eating for breakfast, but he somehow has figured out how to turn this power play into a potent offensive tool for this team. But yeah, I think the Canadiens have done a good job getting in front of other teams' goaltenders. Corey Perry is living in the blue paint. Arturi Lehkonen was living right in front of Hellebuck when he deflected the second goal of the game by him. But it doesn't seem like teams are doing that very well against Carey Price. It's certainly the best way to beat him. We've seen him get locked into these zones, especially when the lights are the brightest, and especially in those elimination games. He just stands on his head. The only guy who's the only 2 players who have consistently beaten him this year are William Nylander and then Logan Stanley in this game. So, it is what it is. But I do agree, guys, teams have to get bodies in front of him if they have any chance of beating him.
He's also Price that has had a big impact on the team, and his cool composure. You can even see in the post-game pressers. Just he just one-line answers, just he's so focused. He's not giving anything to anybody. How much does that even help the younger guys? Because you can see that their emotions are so high and low, whereas Price is so even keel.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of stuff in game rattles Carey Price anymore. There's stories of, him in practice. I know before the first round series against Toronto, in the last practice or whatever, he got scored on a breakaway by Paul Byron and he smashed his stick, and everyone was saying, "Oh, angry Carey Price is here." But he doesn't do that in games. He'll give up a goal, but then he's going to get right back up and keep battling. I think that only helps guys like, Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, and I think especially a young kid like Romanov, who's playing defense, stepping into his first NHL playoff game. I can't help but feel that Price was probably talking him through a lot of that. Keep trying to keep the heart rate as low as possible. That's something Price does particularly well for himself. But I think that's also a thing that's a leadership by committee with this roster. That's what Marc Bergevin has built. He's built a team of guys who know how to win. Even Jake Allen, who's sitting on the bench as the backup goalie, doing what backup goalies do. He's talking to his teammates. Eric Stahl's been phenomenal in these playoffs. So is Corey Perry. Tyler Toffoli knows how to win. He won a cup earlier on in his career with the Kings. There's a lot of leadership on this roster that doesn't just stop with Shea Weber and Carey Price.
With Winnipeg, the focus is now turned to the off season. Is Paul Stastny and others back? And how do they keep Neil Pionk?
I think Neil Pionk's an RFA, so I'm not worried. I don't think that's an issue for them. They'll protect him in the expansion draft. As far as Paul Stastny, I think he seems to enjoy it here. The organization, I know they value him. They tried to bring him back before. I'm just wondering if they do have the cap room. I know Brian Little currently on long-term injury. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. He seems to want to come back, but I'm not sure. So I'm just going to bring up their cap friendly. Mm-hmm. And then the other ones, free agents. Andrew Kopp is a restricted free agent. They'll try to have to find some money for him. Matthew Perreault, UFA, he's made $4 million this year. He's fit in well, and I thought he had a great season playing on the, mostly on the fourth line, but on the third line as well. If they were to bring him back, it would have to be at a significant pay cut. He might have to move on. Thompson and Lewis, they're probably here for a year. Maybe they sign one of them just to expose in the expansion draft. And then, Neil Pionk, he's an RFA. He made $3 million this year. I think he'd probably be getting a raise to maybe like 5.5.
And it's tight with the cap being stagnant. I don't know how they can fit all those kind of guys in. So,
the Andrew Kopp one is interesting because he went to arbitration with them last time, and I know that he did not have a good experience. He came out wanting to prove the team wrong, I guess, and he definitely did that. Had a career year this year. So I am curious what kind of salary he makes, or do they trade him? I guess for the expansion draft, I think that's going to be the big story. Who are they going to lose? I think a lot of people are pointing to Mason Appleton. He spent most of the year with Lowry and Kopp on that third line and played very well. And maybe he could play on a second line on an expansion team if given, more opportunity. He drives to the net. He's a good, strong player. But I think those are the big questions for them. Defense, Tucker Pullman's a free agent. I mean, he was solid against Edmonton on the third line, but they spent most of the year with him playing with Morrissey on the top line, and it didn't go very well. Derek Forbort, he's a free agent, unrestricted. They signed him for a year. He definitely overperformed his $1 million contract. He played very well. I wonder if they go look to bring in some of their young players. Dylan Sandberg, who's played in the Moose this year, and Ville Heinola, who's a former first-round draft pick from a couple years ago. If they look to bring those guys in. So I think we'll have to wait and see, but those are the Paul Stastny one I think is definitely the most interesting because he seemed to be a great fit with the organization, likes the city. I know the fans love him as well, and he fit in just such a great fit. But what did he make? He made, I think, $6 million this year, 6.5. Yeah. He would probably need less than that. And is he looking for another long-term deal? So, I know a lot of people here would love to see him return. Can they make it? Because this team is definitely right up against the cap, but that salary would be coming off the books. So they'll have to, and Perreault's as well. So they'll have to, they'll probably have to pick one of those. And if Pearl comes back, would probably be much lower salary.
Ian, before we go, what number value in terms of chances do they have against one of those top teams in the West there?
I know this is a question for Money Puck. I don't know, man. I've counted this team out all season. They've proved me wrong at every step of the way. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think that, those teams are built to get by teams like Montreal. If the Canadiens win it, it'll be in 7. If not, I could see an early series against either of them, but we'll have to see how this Colorado Vegas series wraps up. Does it go 7? How beat up are these guys at the end of it? Do the Canadiens benefit from the rest? Is it rest or rust? That narrative that we heard at the beginning of this series, with the Canadiens coming off 7 games and the Jets coming off a sweep. It'll be interesting. I'm not putting any expectations on the rest of this. I didn't expect to be here. I didn't expect to get to this series, and we're getting past this series. We're halfway to a Stanley Cup. There's more work to be done, but definitely I think most Canadiens fans are just enjoying the ride. That's all we can really do at this point. It feels a lot like 2010 in that respect.
And keep on celebrating, Montreal. This is what a story and what a ride it is. You can find them on Twitter at maybe it's Ian for Ian and at Remis for Michael. Thank you for stopping by, gents.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
I want to thank our guests today, Lauren, Michael, Ian, and Christian, for joining me for some great series chats. Wow, Montreal is in the 3rd round. They haven't seen that since 2014. Carey Price is a man on a mission. And can, again, another hardworking team like the Islanders beat the big bad Bruins? Well, might see soon enough on Wednesday. They're going to Game 6 then. It has been outstanding to watch. Remember, if you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode, or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at Russia98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. If you want, you can also contact us on our website. You can use the hashtag at Jablam Sports, Jablam Sports, that's JABLAM, and our website is jablamsports.com/contact for our contact page there. Please check out our website, go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode, including this one, and you'll get our guests' info and links to things we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Also, follow us on our Facebook group, Jablam Sports. Check us out, folks. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.